Hi, this is the Daily Overpass. My name is Eric and I make apps. Now today I want to talk about going a little bit extra to secure your clients. Alright, so a few days ago I talked to you about securing clients, and I talked about how as a software developer you don't want to be a commodity. You want to be able to distinguish yourself from other software developers, because in terms of your prospects or your clients, to them we all look the same. We all, a software developer is a software developer, even though we know we're all different. We all have different skills and different mentalities and all that kind of stuff. Today I want to talk a little bit more about acquiring clients, because there's two ways that we do it. We either do outbound or inbound, right? And outbound I've never been really good at. I'm terrible at cold calling. I'll do a little bit of cold emailing, but not so much. A lot of the stuff we get lately has been inbound. So people finding us, they call us up and all this kind of stuff. But sometimes, and sometimes that works really well. Sometimes, we'll get a call. Somebody says, hey, we need an app. We'll have a meet. We'll drop the designs, and then boom, we're off and going. They're exciting. We keep the enthusiasm going. We try. One of the things I try to do, and I'm not the best at this, is to try to keep the excitement at the right level all the way through. So that means if somebody comes to you with an app idea, they're excited about it. If you let it sit for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like I sometimes do, right, before I actually go back to them with a quote, then the excitement runs out and things just sort of peter, and they peter out, and the lead runs cold, right? So sometimes we were able to do that right away, and sometimes it takes a little bit of extra effort. And I want to tell you this, a few years ago, we have one client now we've had for a few years now. We've done a lot of work for them, and and I'm still quoting on some new stuff for them now. But when they called me up a few years ago, it wasn't easy to get them as a client. I mean, the thing is that they called up me. It was the head of this company, and it's a small company. I mean, not small like my company, me and then overseas developers, but it's like, I think a dozen people, 20 people in the company, something like that, right? So I get a call from the managing director of the company, and it's this was like December, a few years ago, right? So it was like, he calls up and he says, yeah, I've saw, we need an app, and I normally work with a different software company, but the guy that I normally talk to, he's on holiday at the moment, so I just had a quick web search and I found your website, and basically I wanted to see if maybe it's something you could do, or whether or not I just wait for him to come back or whatever. So so we had a quick 5-minute conversation, all this kind of stuff, and he went not really committal, but I said, yeah, we should get together and talk again. I'm happy to come out and meet with you, all that kind of stuff, and that was it. Call ended. Later that night I sent an email saying, hey, it was, I got his contact information, obviously. Sent an email saying, hey, it was really great to talk with you, and it sounds like an interesting project. I'd love to work on it. Really looking forward to hearing from you. Right? No response. Right? And a week later, I kept thinking about this, thinking, this is the kind of clients that we need. We need businesses. We need more with recurring work, as opposed to an individual who might have an app idea, but which is great. It's great. We all started with an app idea, but sometimes that doesn't deliver as much as with a business, because they'll have one app idea and then they'll have their clients, and it spreads a lot more, right? So I emailed them a week later, and then I emailed them 2 weeks later, and then just kind of and then I kept emailing. This was over a course of a couple months, right? And then it got to the point where I felt like I was reeking of desperation, right? I felt like, whereas first I was kind of nonchalant about it, then after a while I started feeling like the 15-year-old kid who keeps calling the same girl over and over and over again, and she doesn't call him back, right? She's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, I think I want to go out sometime, whatever. So, it just felt like I was just reeking of desperation. So, anyway, so this was late January, and I just sort of thought, this lead is cold. I mean, it's dead. It's not going to happen or whatever, but, I didn't really try that hard to get it, right? All I'm doing is calling them and asking for, emailing and calling and asking for 10 minutes of their time or whatever, and not getting any response, right? And I'm thinking either they're just no longer interested, or they weren't impressed with the conversation we had, or maybe the guy that they were dealing with before come back from holiday and he's going to do it or whatever. But I thought, but I still didn't give it enough try. So what I did was, I sat down, I just sort of blocked out like half a day, and I just started writing a specification. So based on our quick 5-minute phone call, right, I started putting together some flow charts, some architecture diagrams, some wireframes saying how the app would hang together. And I had to make, like, because I didn't know anything about what they actually needed, I had to make a lot of assumptions about it. So based on what kind of technology they use, what kind of technology they probably use, what kind of what their users were like, the kind of stuff, based on what he told me, which was not much for an app, but what other things could we add into that based on that. So I gave this detailed specifications with the flow charts and the wireframes and everything, and then I gave one of the wireframes to Sandy, our designer, who's she's great. So she takes it and she gives a mock-up. I talked about this before, the money shot, right? Every time we do a quote, if it's something that we really want, we'll do a mock-up of it. So just give it to her, she'll go through and put together some different designs and say how this could look and everything, like that, based on their brand and everything. And it looked really good, and then I did a price based on, with a lot, and there were a lot of stipulations in this quote. It was like, if this is what you need, if this, depending on this, this is the type of quote we would need, but this is a pre-discussion ballpark figure, right? Pre-discussion, because like, I don't really know what you need, but this is the quote. And it wasn't really a high quote. It was like, I think it was like $6,000. I think it was like $6 or $7,000. And again, I don't talk a lot about how much we charge, because it's difficult, because it's always different, right? So that's no, but anyway, so when I met with them, so I set this quote out, right? And like within a couple hours I got a response, right? Like for months, no response. For months, I could tell, I could see the read receipts and all this stuff, right? I know they're reading the email, but it's just whatever. I sent this thing through, and bam, they responded and they said, you should come in and we can meet, right? So like a week later, I went in and all in my suit and everything, went down to their offices, met with them and everything, had a sit down, and we discussed their app, right? And they're still a client today. It all worked out really well. But one of the things they said was, the reason we called you was, I mean, the quote was really good, the designs were really good, or the flow charts, everything. Obviously you understood what we were talking about in that short conversation. But the big thing was the price, because you didn't come out with like $50,000 or whatever, right? And I thought, and I said, every time I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot with clients. They'll say, well, as long as it's not like like $50,000 or $200,000 or whatever, right? And I'm thinking, because they have no idea how much an app costs, right? Nobody does. And every time they say that, I always say, is that how much room I had to play with? I want to change my quote, right? So, but it costs what it costs. You make the stipulations based on the time and materials and everything like that. So when they said that, they said, that's when they were interested in talking about it, because that's the big thing that hangs in the air. Whenever you're talking to any client, whenever you're acquiring any client, the thing that they don't know is how much it's going to cost. And you know what? The thing is, you can't give them a quote unless you know what it is they need, because they're all different, right? So once you get that out of the way, a lot of times things get moving a lot quicker, right? And like I said, it was a half a day of work, and it really worked out. And this kind of stuff we've done all the time. I mean, we don't do it for every quote anymore. For a while I was trying to, but it was just killing me. Like every time you have a 10-minute conversation with somebody on the phone, and you have like a 3-hour task of putting together this quote and the designs and the mock-ups, right? So after a while that became not sustainable, but it is something when a lead runs cold, we have to get that nudge and just sort of try to get the excitement back up a little bit again, right? Because the last thing you want to lose when dealing with prospects is their excitement about the project. You have to keep that going. Otherwise, they'll think, oh, you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe it's not such a great idea, right? So, anyway, and sometimes you just have to make those investments, and not even without knowing whether or not it's going to work out. And of course, people say, how do you know they're not just going to take that quote and those designs and take it to another company to do it for cheaper? And that's just one of those things. I just have to assume that we're the ones who understand it. We're the ones who get it. We're the ones that based on what you're talking about, we're the ones who can help you realize your dream. Then they always come back to us. So anyway, that's the way it's always worked so far. Anyway, I hope that's been interesting, helpful, whatever. It's one of my proud moments in terms of client acquisitions, right? Anyway, that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.